we are taking our rights back, and we will, restore access to abortion here in Arizona.
After months of debate, abortion access is heading to the ballot. Right now, the procedure is legal up to 15 weeks and includes exceptions in cases of medical emergencies. If Prop 139 is passed, that could change and allow abortions until 24 weeks, with exceptions to save the mother's life or to protect her physical or mental health. Opponents say it goes too far.
The key here is that they are not given all the information. They're being deceived as to exactly what is in this amendment.
Now there's a plan to mount a campaign against Prop 139.
Informing voters of exactly what is in this amendment, because when they learn the different things that are in here and just that it goes much further than what they are being told.
In April, the Arizona Supreme Court restored an 1864 abortion law, banning nearly all abortions, with no exceptions for rape or incest, only to save the mother's life. The Republican-controlled legislature narrowly voted to repeal, and Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs quickly signed it. Supporters of this measure say a constitutional amendment ensures that abortion rights cannot be easily erased by a court decision or legislative vote.
That is something that women should be deciding on their own with their doctors and their families, and not something that should be left up to politicians. And should anyone doubt that, just look at the sheer number of signatures that we were able to get and how overwhelmingly supportive people are of this issue here in Arizona.
We ended up with 577,000 plus signatures.
State Secretary Adrian Fontes says Arizona for Abortion Access, a coalition supporting the amendment, turned in the most signatures ever validated by a citizens' initiative in Arizona. He says authenticating those signatures is a process.
We take all of the petition pages, verify the addresses, the dates, make sure they're in technical compliance, and then we send county by county all of those signatures to the county recorders.
And we mentioned it's not a done deal just yet, and that's because there is an active lawsuit between Arizona for Abortion Access and Arizona Right to Life. That's an organization against abortion. It's all over the language shared with petition signers, and it argues that Arizona for Abortion Access did not properly convey its practical impact. It's now in the hands of the Arizona Supreme Court, and therefore could not end up on the November ballot after all, despite the record amount of signatures submitted or the Secretary of State's office verification of those signatures. The decision will most likely come down in the next few days before ballots get printed. Reporting live in the newsroom, Alexis Dominguez for Arizona's Family.
Yeah, the timeline is ticking for that decision from the state Supreme Court. Alexis, thanks.